Hello, fellow humans. Is it too crazy to think that there should be a limit to how much wealth a human can have? If you say yes, it's too crazy, then should we allow some humans to have $1 trillion or infinite dollars? If you say no, it's not crazy, what should be the maximum limit? $1 billion? 100 million? I argued before for a maximum income of $111,111 with no exceptions. Today, I will argue that a maximum wealth of $10 million is more than enough for any human to have a decent life. There are many arguments to defend this. Let's go through some of them. To get to the wealth of Jeff Bezos, you would need to work 2,000 years, 8 hours a day, no weekends, no vacation, and earn $35,000 per hour. That's inequality. Elon Musk can buy 274,000 houses in cash with his wealth. You can buy one with a mortgage for 30 years if you're lucky. That's inequality. Mark Zuckerberg can buy a new Rolls-Royce boat tail, the most expensive car in the world, priced at $28 million every single day, and only from the interest he would earn if he kept his wealth in a savings account at 6% interest. That's inequality. If this is enough to make you angry and realize how unfair our economy is, you can stop the video right here. If you need more reasons for why this insanity needs to stop, I urge you to keep watching. To build a case for a maximum wealth of $10 million for all humans, I will use 3 tools: determinism, limitarianism, and degrowth. Briefly, determinism shows how we do not have any free will whatsoever, that all our behavior is determined by personal history from seconds to decades ago, all influenced by the environment, over which we do not have any control. Determinism shows how merit and status are ridiculous ideas, how nobody deserves their wealth or position in life. People can be rewarded for putting in different levels of effort, but through rights and entitlements, not merit. All of this decided democratically. Limitarianism is the ethical and moral need to put a maximum on wealth as a principle to organize society. Finally, degrowth talks about slowing down the economy, putting it on a healthy diet by phasing out wasteful activities and phasing in well-being for everyone. Reason 1. There's no merit whatsoever. Here comes determinism. Robert Sapolsky quotes research that demonstrates how human behavior is caused by what happened in the body and brain seconds before you acted, minutes before, hours before, days, years, and even generations ago. No thought or action happens without a cause. There is no free will. For free will to exist, you would need to prove that a bunch of neurons fired without a cause, free from any influence. You will have to prove that your behavior and thinking is also not caused by anything. It feels like we choose freely what to do, but in reality it's an illusion. All our choices have an ultimate cause outside of us. You cannot control what you do, as you cannot control where you are born, the color of your skin, to have rich parents, to be good at chess, to have a good memory, to like ice cream or to hate spinach. The consequences for wealth accumulation are huge. Determinism wipes out all merit. The entire libertarian philosophy of just desert, no, not this, but this, goes down the drain. Along with it, down goes status. Since humans are now rewarded differently based on merit, and if merit proves to be an illusion, then rewards are an illusion. Elon Musk only had blind luck to become wealthy. A chain of circumstances put him in that position, not the wisdom of his decisions, that were actually a bunch of snappy neurons just doing their thing. There's no evidence for anything else. I go much further than Ingrid Robeyns and Tom Malleson when I say that the limit to wealth has no connection with merit whatsoever. A limit of $10 million is meant to create a moral and just society. There's plenty of room to grow your wealth, if that's your thing, up until that limit. Reason number 2, everything has a limit, so should wealth. Life has a beginning and an end. Civilizations have a beginning and an end. Planets have a beginning and an end. Hard work has limits. The hours in a day are limited. The amount of land, water, air, trees are limited. Even social behaviors are limited by law. You cannot harm others without consequences. Wealth should not be an exception on this ground alone, that there's no natural justification for not having a limit. This is also what Degrowth says. Earth is a limited system. We broke its limits. We are now in overshoot that manifests itself as the climate crisis, the refugee crisis, social unrest, wars over resources and land. To fix the crisis, we must consider the limits and respect them, or we will consume ourselves into extinction. Reason number 3, inequality matters a lot. Why does it matter that the official poverty line is $2.15 a day, or that some economists say that the poverty line should be at $15 a day? And that is what you can buy in the United States for that money, not what you can buy in rural Congo. It matters because it has bad consequences. It creates stigma, undermines social cohesion, leads to abuse of power, undermines equality of opportunity, causes mental health problems. It's also a matter of principle. Billions of humans are so dirt poor while others swim in oceans of wealth. It itches your eyes to see this, doesn't it? It pulls out feelings related to ignorance, insolence, sociopathy. It is what it is. I don't care. There's nothing I can do about it. And even worse, there's nothing anybody can do about it. There's also huge inequality between nations. The Global South lost $62 trillion from 1960 to 2017 in the global trade exchange with the rich Global North. That's a loss of around $9,000 per person and a gain of $65,000 per person in the Global North. All this is possible because the ruling super-rich got away with it. Reason number 4, extreme wealth is dirty money. In his book, Nazi Billionaires, David DeYoung shows how contemporary heirs of rich Nazi supporters must be transparent that their inherited wealth comes from collaboration in genocide. Close to Auschwitz, I.G. Farben acquired for cheap land whose Polish inhabitants had been forcibly evicted by Nazi occupiers. Then I.G. built a factory where it put to work thousands of prisoners from the Auschwitz concentration camp. How about the wealth made by major fashion brands on the backs of cheap labor and inhumane working conditions? Do people making t-shirts have more freedom than the prisoners at Auschwitz? We must say something about slavery too. Just before abolition, in around 1860, about 4 million enslaved humans worked in America. It has been calculated that those people lost about $20 trillion in wages for their work. That value has been passed on over generations into the hands of the heirs of slave owners. Today, Black Americans own 4.5% of total private wealth, while they make up 13.6% of the US population. Of course, not all extreme wealth is criminally dirty from a historical and legal perspective. Some wealth is cleaner than others. But if we had the limit, we would have a virtual guarantee that dirty money cannot happen again. Reason number 5, people can imagine limits to wealth. For the Dutch, having total wealth above 2.65 million euros means a family of 4 is super rich. In the same survey, most people do not consider extreme wealth itself a major problem and object to the government's enforcement of limits to wealth and income. At the same time, people support more taxes on the super rich. What can we make of this? People recognize that extreme wealth starts at very low levels, well below $10 million. On one hand, extreme wealth is not a problem. On the other hand, the super rich should be taxed. Sounds like a contradiction. Baked into answers to surveys like this is perhaps ignorance about how extreme wealth is very bad to society. Some concealed envy, and why not? Some hope that maybe I can be super rich too. It only takes a bit of self-reflection to realize that an objective limit to wealth can refocus the mind on a much more realistic and fulfilling life. A limit that everyone respects and does not attempt to break in secret. Limitarianism makes a distinction between three limits: the richest limit, the ethical limit, and the political limit. The richest limit is the level at which additional money cannot increase your standard of living in any meaningful way. The ethical limit is the maximum level of wealth one can own on moral grounds. The political limit is the ultimate limit on wealth that the state should use as a goal. Wealth above this level is immoral. By the very fact you're watching this video and think about this classification, you can now internalize these differences. It applies to everyone else: the Dutch, the Americans, the Japanese, and even Romanians. This information can change how people understand accumulation of wealth. Reason number 6, tax dodging. The super wealthy dodge taxes a lot in two ways: tax avoidance and tax evasion. Tax avoidance is using legal rules to minimize the tax one pays. Tax evasion is dodging tax through illegal practices. In the US alone, $470 billion in taxes that are due are not paid every year. If that money was put into a savings account for each child at age 18, they would each have $115,000 plus interest in their account on the day they turned 18. Globally, about 8% of household wealth is held in tax havens, 10% of the world's GDP. Here's now something really interesting. Nearly 3/4 of millionaires polled in G20 countries support higher taxes on wealth. Over half think extreme wealth is a threat to democracy. Whoa! Even the super rich support taxes. Then why do they dodge them in the first place? Maybe those answering these surveys are not tax dodgers. The problem is with the rules of taxation. They are loose, they are uneven, they allow exemptions, they allow for greed, they allow bias. They do not have a universal rules. If such a rule existed and if it was applied to everyone without exceptions, without exemptions, it will be much easier to deal with tax dodging. Reason number 7, extreme wealth is really bad for democracy, and I mean really bad. Quick reminder about how I define capitalism: as an undemocratic relation between property, power, capital, and the growth imperative. The owners of capital have power based on the principle one share equals one vote. If you are a worker in an Amazon warehouse, you have no power over how Amazon should be governed. You need shares to have that power. This translates into huge imbalance of political power. Collective decision-making is wiped out in corporations. If you count the board of directors as a collective, that's pretty much the extent of democracy in corporations. And even there, it's questionable. About 10 people deciding the work life for about 1.5 million. The super wealthy can literally buy political power by making contributions to political candidates. Empirical studies have shown that US politics is heavily tilted in favor of the super wealthy. Political decisions tend to reflect the preferences of the rich, while ignoring those of the poor. A more insidious form of lobbying is corporate blackmail. It's when major companies influence political decisions by threatening certain actions if things don't go their way. Reason number 8, taxing wealth is for solidarity. In his book, Malleson argues that we need the maximum limit on wealth because the rich undermine democracy, and the rich privately appropriate the resources that we desperately need for other things such as providing basic needs, essential opportunities, green investment, and economic security to reduce xenophobia and populism. You know, we often understand taxes upside down. Governments do not collect taxes then spend them on hospitals and schools. They spend first, then collect the taxes. And if you're a country that has its own currency, you can spend as much as you want regardless of how much taxes you collect and when you collect them. This is called modern monetary theory. Malleson is correct that we should tax the rich But the real reason should be to foster social solidarity and belonging. Yes, it's good to avoid inflation and not let the government's budget be out of control, but social solidarity and belonging should come first. We need a cap on wealth so we can have a friendlier society, a less divisive society with more unbiased opportunities. Reason number 9. Phasing out class divide. The political left is often busy with talking about how society is divided in classes, the rich versus the poor, workers versus managers, capital owners versus salary workers, the global north versus the global south, and so on. In terms of political strategy, having a demand like a wealth limit of $10 million can unite the entire progressive left against the ruling elite. When the entire left unites behind this proposal, the chances of success can increase exponentially. This is not a far-fetched idea. The 8-hour workday, ending slavery, empowering women to vote, marriage equality seemed to be revolutionary ideas in their early days. They were based on an egalitarian moral code and on advancing well-being for all humans. A wealth limit has the same foundations. It could be the best policy demand that the political left could put forward today. It might as well save the left from inner fighting and fragmentation. It could unite humans from the labor, environmental, and indigenous movements behind the greatest political alliance that has ever formed in history. We hear fierce capitalists dismissing the limits on wealth on the grounds that you are jealous of the super wealthy, even if envy was a real motivation, which may be or may be not really important. Even if it is so, why can we not limit wealth just because it creates envy? It is of course a childish argument. More so, envy comes in 2 flavors, so do psychologists say: benign envy involving upper motivation and malicious envy involving hostility against superior others. In both cases, there's no intrinsic connection to wealth being infinitely large. Envy can exist even if wealth was capped at $1 million. The glitter displayed by the super wealthy may cause some envy in many people and some adulation. Sure, some worshipping too. If that glitter disappeared by putting a limit on wealth, people will have the opportunity to see the wealthy more grounded to reality and closer to everyone else. It will humanize the rich and elevate everybody else. Reason 11. Upgrade the thinking of billionaires. Ingrid Robeyns went on the Pitchfork Economics podcast, co-hosted by billionaire Nick Hanauer. The billionaire liked the effort behind Limitarianism, but was not convinced.
Of course, one of the really interesting facts about this idea that if you put somebody like me at the very tippy top, that my wealth would be limited to $10 million, is that as a practical matter, I suspect that that would create a society where the median wealth would be $5 million. Because you can't squish the money around any other way without making most people multimillionaires. And if you could do that, that would obviously be a pretty great society where everybody in it was financially independent and thriving. The question is, as a practical matter, can you get there? And for my own part, I don't think limits are the way. I certainly believe that the tax code should be infinitely more progressive. I'm serious about the proposal of linking the wages at the bottom to the wages at the top. I think that that's a way to tie the fortunes of the society together, I think, in a very, very productive way.
So instead of limits, Nick Hanauer wants to link wages. Say maximum wage cannot exceed 10 times the minimum wage. But this is also a limit. It's not capping wealth, it's capping wage ratios. Sure, capping wage ratios is great. I support it. But it can be done in addition to capping wealth. A limit to wealth is easier to track mathematically than tracking wage ratios inside each country and between countries. Wealth is seeing life as an ocean. Income is looking at the rivers that flow into the ocean. They're all connected. They all matter for bringing balance. Reason 12. Extreme wealth burns the planet. The 5 super majors, BP, Shell, Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Total Energies, showered shareholders with dividend payments and share buybacks worth $104 billion in 2022. In East Asia, the poorest 50% emit on average 2.9 tons of CO2 equivalent per year, the middle 40% emit nearly 8 tons, and the top 10% almost 40 tons. This is in sharp contrast with North America, where the bottom 50% emit fewer than 10 tons, the middle 40% around 20 tons, and the top 10% around 69 tons. Where does it have to be to have high chances of staying below 1.5 degrees Celsius global temperature increase? The average per capita emissions should be 1.9 tons between now and 2050, roughly the equivalent of an economy class round-trip flight between London and New York, and 0 tons after 2050. 0. Not 1, not 10, not 100, 0. What does this have to do with wealth? If wealth was capped, rich humans would not be able to receive insane dividends from fossil fuels, regardless if they receive them directly in cash or through shady intermediaries. And there's a lot of shady intermediaries. This can accelerate the phasing out of fossil fuels because these companies would either have to pay those amounts into taxes or invest them into clean energy, or even better, be dismantled and wiped out from the economy. We can safely say these are some of the most criminal organizations in human history because they are killing life on Earth with premeditation. Reason 13. Experience finitude. In the Nick Hanauer version of limits, incomes are limited in their relative ratios, minimum income versus maximum income. Both incomes can keep growing in locked tandem indefinitely. At least in theory, a maximum wealth is the ceiling that would tell the incomes where to stop. Knowing the existence of this limit, regardless if you reach it or not, is liberating. We can stop obsessing as a society about the accumulation of wealth. Those humans who still want to measure themselves against how much wealth they can accumulate, they can still do that. Once we stop obsessing about who can climb the ladder faster or higher, we can refocus our minds and souls onto something else, much more interesting and meaningful, such as understanding we are not tardigrades who can survive very high and very low temperatures, understanding what consciousness is, phasing out fascism, and finding that theory of quantum gravity already because I'm tired of waiting. The sky is blue, the grass is green. I am a determinist. I had no free will in breaking the pattern of the list. Let's go back to merit. It feels like everything revolves around it. If no other reason convinced you, maybe thinking about merit should be the tipping point. Tom Malleson argues against merit to a large extent. All wealth is based on luck, including talent and skill. Robert Sapolsky shows how at the individual level, merit disappears completely when we see the scientific evidence that free will does not exist. Even philosopher Michael Sandel argues that we live in a tyranny of merit and that we could live in a much better society if our values did not come from the delusion that we have to reward humans with great wealth and status, when in reality they did not deserve it. They did not have agency over their decisions, behavior, and thinking. It boils down to this. We are 100% our history. We are 100% what happens to us from within and from outside. The author of our decisions is the multitude of processes in the brain. There's no me outside those processes telling my body how to behave or my brain what to think. Once we truly internalize this scientific reality, the pyramid of merit crumbles like a house of cards, taking down with it extreme wealth, undeserved social status, and undeserved punishment. In essence, this is the path to liberation. If you can, please support me through the links below to cover the costs of these videos. Future videos will not be possible without your support. I will never collect money from advertising. Until next time, be well, increase the peace.